We're going to be running the air yards report from week 12. We're going to identify the wide receivers who are trending up from this. So we're not going to talk about your usual wide receivers who are getting a ton of targets week in, week out. CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, the usual suspects. But we're going down the line of the top wide receivers and air yards from last week to see whether or not there's something we can see in the trends to allow us to buy into. I know trade deadlines are dead right now in a lot of basic redraft leagues, but this could feel confirmation bias. They can help you set your DFS lineups for DraftKings and FanDuel. It can also help you projecting out for next year and even for Dynasty if you're looking to mess around with your trades as well and with your team. So there's a lot of good information here to look at. But one thing you need to do before we dig in is click that subscribe button. Tap it with the finger on your phone. Click it with the mouse on the computer because we're here deep diving the metrics every single day. We're going over players every single day. We're helping you set your waiver wire. We're helping you set your lineups and everything else. Click that button. Stop missing out. Let's dig in here today. Marquise Brown has always been an air yards monster. And with Kyler Murray back, that is going to be holding true more often than not. He led the NFL last week with 189 air yards and a 15.8 average depth of target, getting targets deep downfield, and plenty of them with 12, equated to 14.8 PPR fantasy points. If this continues to hold as a trend, leading the NFL in air yards, being top 5, top 8, or wherever it is, you know what? He's going to splash big in the back half of the season, next year, depending on who's that quarterback there. Probably Kyler, probably not. Who knows? But again, Marquise Brown, air yards monster, gets targets, and this is what we expect from him, to be over 100 air yards a game, at minimum pushing around 80. So nothing really new here, but in those matchups where they got to throw the ball, Marquise Brown has a ton of upside, and air yards is a big indicator of a wide receiver's upside. Gabe Davis, air yards machine. This guy's up and down due to that because it really depends on the flow of the game. Had a lot of targets in this matchup with 12. Not the usual case, but you can tell that he is a guy who's very volatile, very up and down. Looking at the scoring here, week 8, 23 fantasy points. Week 9, 0. Week 10, 9. Week 11, 0. Week 12, 22. And it's been like that throughout his career. It's been like that throughout the season. And he is a deep threat who gets spotty volume here and there. And what I mean by that is some games he'll get very little volume. Some games he'll get a lot of targets. Some games those deep targets cash in. He gets that long touchdown. Some games nothing cashes in. You don't know what you're going to get with Gabe Davis. But there are a lot of games or a few games or a handful of games throughout the season, like we saw against Philly, where he just reels it in and gets you a 20 spot or more, and you're loving it. And that's the Gabe Davis effect. That's the Will Fuller effect that we keep talking about. He's a prime Will Fuller-esque wide receiver there in fantasy scoring. Jordan Addison is proving no matter who's at quarterback, if the matchup is right, he can get those deep targets. He can get that opportunity. Did not lead to fantasy production, though, 9.9 PPR fantasy points. But when you look at the workload, things are still on track. A 33.3% target share is very good. That's elite target share. That's top tier. That's up there with the big dogs, especially if that was consistent from week to week. That means he'll be cooking like an elite wide receiver. Obviously, we know Justin Jefferson is there for the long term, but still, 16.3 average depth of target. So we're starting to get deeper targets. This proves that he can play downfield, get those opportunities, but still play the way he's usually used in the offense as well. Get volume, and you know what? He's heating up over the back end of the season when it comes in terms of workload, which is something you want to look at when you're prospecting out on these wide receivers. Christian Watson is the Will Fuller for the Packers. And I'm always going to talk about the Will Fuller effect because he's a fantasy dynamo when it comes to strategy. 140 air yards in this game, a 28 He has been cold this year. He has been running very cold. And you know what? He's a deep target maestro here. 140 air yards in this one, a 28 And when he reels them in, when he gets the opportunity, and when he's not playing injured, coming back from injury, or injured, there's more opportunities for that to happen. Granted, but still, I think we know how he's going to be used going forward for this year, next year, because he is the deep threat in his offense. 7 targets, a 23.3% target share, so good volume as well. But if the deep ball's there and they're slinging it deep, he's going to be getting opportunity, and that's going to be an opportunity for him to throw up a 20 spot. Elijah Moore, 128 air yards, 14.2 average depth of target, 9 targets at 23.1% target share. So with the quarterback changes they've had in Cleveland due to the injuries, you're seeing some different volume here with Elijah Moore. He's been holding true for a decent target share, around 19 to 20% throughout the season. It's been fluctuating, but it's been hovering around 20%. Some games it's been a little bit lower, but he's been consistent on targets, which is a good thing. The ADOT hasn't always been there, but in this game it was, and the air yards was there due to volume and due to some deep targets here. Did not hit in fantasy, though. 5.4 PPR fantasy points. The thing about Elijah Moore, he's really hard to buy in right now for redraft, hard to pick up. But again, if you're getting a target share and you're in a good matchup and you need a lottery ticket wide receiver, there's a chance he could cash in on any given week. Because granted, if you're pushing 10 targets a game, granted 7 to 10, say that range, because the last 2 games prior to this one, 7 and 7, and then we had a 9 spot here. You got opportunities to score, and even with bad quarterback play, not accurate targets, there's still opportunities for you to do something. Maybe cross the goal line, reel in a couple balls, even though they're short, it could really add up in PPR if you keep bringing in these targets. That didn't happen against Denver. It happened a little bit against Pittsburgh. Got you 12. Happened against Baltimore. So we are getting volume here. We are getting some production. That's something to look at for Elijah Moore if he's on the waiver wire. Tank Dell. We talk about him every day, I feel like. We talk about him every day. There's really not much to say. He's been balling out. He's a very good, nuanced wide receiver and create separation. He gets downfield. You can use him in the slot. You can use him on the outside. CJ Stroud's cooking. He's patient. He's very stoic in the pocket. 125 errors, 15.6 average depth of target. We're starting to see the air yards mount up for Tank Dell. That is a good indicator for years to come here because we know he can be used deep. That is an indicator that he can be used on the outside, inside, all over the place. Even though we've seen it, but the numbers is saying it too when we're looking at it just from a macro standpoint. Tank Dell, at this point, even though he's age 24, an older rookie, he's good to buy into in Dynasty. The price is up there, though. Should have did it a few months ago. But this isn't really a deep dive on Tank Dell, but things are looking good. Let's just say that. Jaylen Hyatt. If you're looking for a cheap wide receiver to play the penny stocks with, maybe Jaylen Hyatt, 125 air yards in this matchup. He's getting about 90 air yards per game over like his last 4 or so, a 15.6% ADOT. He's getting deep targets, and that is what his prospect profile said coming out of college. This time, in mock drafts and per big media, he was a first-round wide receiver. He won the Biletnikoff, and he's starting to do some things on the field. He's starting to flash. He's starting to see a little bit more routes, a little bit more snaps, being used downfield the way he should be used, getting some targets. He might flash on the back 9 of the season or give you some indicators for 2024 that he could be a cheap option in all formats going forward. Greg Dortch is Greg Dortch, and he's a very good, nuanced wide receiver. He's just very cerebral, creates separation. 100 air yards in this contest, 9 targets, 11.1 ADOT. Kyler Murray's kind of cooking to these wide receivers. He's pushing it downfield. We're seeing some wide receivers produce. Greg Dortch is that wide receiver, and he has runs throughout the year. We saw it last year. He gets those runs where he sees targets, sees opportunities, and becomes a fantasy contributor. He's a gamble still because he's Greg Dortch, but still, we love Greg Dortch. We like him as a money ball play in all formats, DFS, Dynasty, Redraft, because he's cheap. He gets targets here and there, and he's Greg Dortch. Curtis Samuel is a short target maestro with the speed to kill it in the yak department. Got 90 air yards off 12 targets, got a lot of volume, and it's the Sam Howell show here. in Washington, and he slings the ball wherever he wants to do it, and targets will go anywhere in this offense, making it hard to rely on Samuel. He was nicked up earlier a few weeks ago too, but still, it's hard to rely on any pass catcher not named Terry McLaurin because Sam Howell's good. He moves the ball around in this offense, and you know what? Samuel's got upside, and if you want to gamble on upside, it's a good player to gamble on. He's got the speed. He's in an offense that moves the ball. You might as well gamble on him over some of these other Will Fuller-esque jabronis because he gets those short targets, and sometimes it racks up volume, and sometimes he can hit you with that yak because he's got that 4.3 speed. Calvin Ridley's back, and he's starting to produce in a big way. 88 air yards against the Houston Texans, a game where we knew it was going to go nuclear. 12.6 ADOT average depth of target, 7 targets in this matchup with an 18.9% target share. The targets are starting to rack up over his last 4 games. He had a game with 10 targets, then a game with 3, then 9, then 6 it says there, but I got 7 on the spreadsheet. We got some numbers conflicting here, whatever you wanted to believe from big fantasy data. But overall, the numbers are looking good with 88 air yards and looking solid. He's trending up here, getting more volume, deeper targets. Things are looking solid for Calvin Ridley, a guy you want to look at that's on your team and feel more confident about because a lot of people were up and down, and I know this because I get a lot of start-sit questions. A lot of my content stems from start-sit questions because I'll get like 5 or 10 of them, and I'll be like, you know what? This guy's trending up. You need to stop forgetting about this and just trust your gut because he's starting to get volume. Calvin Ridley's starting to get volume. Feel a little bit better about him, but those are 10 wide receivers who are trending in air yards, who are going nuclear through the air. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I want to hear about it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. I want to thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.